Why shouldn't we do wrong? And why should we do right? What is wrong and what is right? In today's day and age, morality is more disputed than ever, everything giving us opposing answers to the question of right or wrong. Some say morality is subjective, which means that morality depends on time, place, culture, and personal feelings. Others say morality is objective, which means that morality is never changing. We either get closer or farther from what is morally right or wrong. Now, whichever position you take, there's more to it. Where did morality come from? Is morality a product of evolution? Is it something completely learned through religion? Or is it ingrained in us from the start? Logically, these views can't all be right. For the sake of the argument, let's grant for a second that morality is subjective, and let's use the topic of slavery as an example. Moral subjectivism would agree that back in the day it was morally okay or even good to own slaves, and that with the change of time it is now immoral. However, this forces the moral subjectivists to accept that owning slaves was not wrong at all, as the morals of the time and culture were in line with it. Although yes, many people at the time tried to justify their ownership of slaves, it didn't make it right. What we think is right doesn't make it right. Most would agree that outside of the minds of people, simply based in reality, that slavery is always wrong no matter the time, place, or culture. To put it in an argumentative form, the position of subjective morality is forced to believe the following. Morality is subjective. If morality is subjective, then it was morally permissible to own slaves. Therefore, it was morally permissible to own slaves. This position becomes problematic because it seems that every day we condemn the history of slavery. But if it was morally permissible at the time, then who are we to blame? Couldn't slavery sometime in the future be a completely fine thing to do again in that case? Not just legal, but actually have nothing wrong with it because morality changed. It is important not to confuse morality with social convention. Just because a culture finds human sacrifice to be legal and socially acceptable, that doesn't make it right, and same goes for slavery. The more stable position left seems to be an objective morality, one that never changes. This position is now forced to believe that no matter the time, place, or culture, things such as slavery and human sacrifice are always immoral. This is less problematic. We condemn both the history of slavery and human sacrifices, not because we changed our minds about it, but because we understand the truth that was always there, that these things were always wrong. Putting it in the same argumentative form, objective morality is forced to believe the following. Morality is objective. If morality is objective, then it was and is always immoral to own slaves. Therefore, it was and is always immoral to own slaves. So those are two opposing views of morality. Whether morality is subjective or objective, where does our sense of morality come from? Again, some say it's a product of evolution, others say it's a product of religion, and even some evolutionary believers end up writing it off as a gut feeling. From the evolutionary perspective, some morals make sense. Don't kill your kids, sacrifice for your kin, be generous with family. Helping your kin to live longer in theory helps your genes go on through natural selection. This would explain how anyone could have morals, religious or not. However, this begs the question of self-sacrifice. Again, sacrificing for your kin, or so-called kin selection, makes sense. But what about the times when firefighters, police officers, military personnel, or even heroic citizens put themselves in harm's way to protect the life of someone they've never met. David Hartsock, a skydiving instructor, saved his student in an accident by rotating himself so he would hit the ground first and cushion his student. He met the student for the first time and nearly died protecting them, currently paralyzed. Most would recognize this not as a moral obligation, but as a moral good. So how could natural selection have created such a thing? Scientists such as Paul Bloom suggest that the evolutionary process has made us smart enough to be impartial with whom we protect and help by understanding the value of every human. But if natural selection truly dictated our moral compass, impartiality would not develop. Natural selection is survival of the fittest, not survival of someone of the same value as me. I've been working on some research on this topic, which I might cover in a future video, just as a heads up. This form of self-sacrifice also shakes the ground under the idea of utilitarian morality. It can be argued that we always gain from the good things we do, even if it's just a nice feeling. But there is almost nothing on earth to be gained from self-sacrifice for a random person, especially when it comes to sacrificing our own life. The position that morality is a product of evolution, in fact, relies on a subjective view of morality. Granting that it is a product of evolution, morality is simply a tool which helps the human race progress. In that case, there is nothing really wrong with violating human rights. It is simply counterproductive to the human race. And with this colder view, some actions such as rape and cheating on your spouse wouldn't even be counterproductive, but actually productive and therefore good. In addition, morality necessarily changed over the course of evolution. So things thousands or millions of years ago that are currently morally impermissible were at some point morally permissible. Not in the sense of progress toward morality, but that morality itself changed because it depends on the genes of those alive. This, of course, is not in line with what we believe to be moral. Because it relies on subjective morality, evolutionary morality is forced to believe that slavery and human sacrifice was not wrong at all at some point in time. The counter to this would be that morality is objective, but in the sense that it is the right answer to what makes a human live long enough to reproduce. Granting this, evolution has guided our moral compasses to point towards that right answer. But the same inconsistencies between morality and natural selection still arises. I'm also not quite on board with saying morality is just a tool to help me reproduce. In some situations, it is quite the opposite. Our moral compass is truly fascinating. We often know what is right or wrong, but we don't even want to follow it. How many times have you stopped yourself from doing something you wanted to do because you had a sense it was wrong? Sometimes we describe morality to be strongly related to emotions, but the interesting thing is that it's often our emotions that lead us to disobey our moral intuition. Next are those who believe morality is a product of religion. There are many sub-ideas of the view of a religious morality, but for the sake of simplicity, we'll first be talking about the effect religious teaching has on the moral compass of people in general, religious or not. Today, in most parts of the world, we hold our moral standards of not sacrificing humans, which is consistent with most existing religions. However, just over 500 years ago, there were still human sacrifices happening in Mexico before the arrival of Christianity. Could this mean that humans get morality from religion? I think it's possible. Even if you're not religious, doesn't mean you are not influenced by the worldview of others. However, there does seem to be an innate sense of morality in us. A study on 3-month-old babies showed they had a preference for characters that expressed altruism. Another study on 5-month-old babies showed a preference for characters that expressed justice. Another one of these religious ideas is that a deity implanted these morals in us. Certainly, a god such as the Jewish, Muslim, or Christian God is capable of doing this, since the teachings between these religions claim we are created by God. This would explain how non-religious people could have morals, simply because it is ingrained in us. Now we might ask about cultures that embrace things that are highly immoral in other cultures. Did God just implant different moral compasses? But ask yourself this question: how many times have you done something you knew was wrong? If you do it enough, it becomes habitual, and if you do it even more, you become desensitized. So getting used to something doesn't make it right, which could be a possible explanation for cultures such as the Aztecs, who routinely had human sacrifices, or like much of the world which accepted slavery. The position that morality comes from God relies on an objective view of morality. Essentially, if God says it's right, then it's right, and if God says it's wrong, then it's wrong. This leaves no room for humans to change what morality is. It would be out of our control, and our sense of morality is literally a sense to some objective morality. Quickly, I would like to note that it is still highly debated whether psychopaths have a sense of morality or if they just learn to copy. They don't have an emotional response, but it is unclear whether they know right from wrong innately. If they don't have an innate sense of morality, it wouldn't actually say much about morality itself. If morality is objective, then they lack the compass which points towards that objective. It doesn't mean that their compass points towards a different morality. So they don't have a different morality, they just lack the sense of it entirely. All of these possibilities come with preconditions which are out of the scope of this video. For our morality to come from God, God must exist. For our morality to be fully taught, we cannot have an innate sense of morality. And for our morality to be a product of evolution, the evolution of the mind must exist. For any of these conditions to be satisfied, it doesn't mean it follows that morality must come from it. It is just necessary for it to be possible for morality to have come from it. I'll leave it up to you to decide what you think about morality. I just hope I gave you some food for thought. If there's anything I got completely wrong, then please let me know. I'm here to learn as well.